Which character should new players prioritize pulling first? This is one of the questions. Maybe it's because there are so many characters in the game nowadays. In fact, there are already dozens of them. As a result, many players are asking this question because they are simply confused about where to start. Especially if you've been following the videos I've uploaded. You've probably heard a lot of new terms or terms that sound pretty unfamiliar to newer players. Because of that, in today's video, I'm going to create a special tier list specifically for new players, so you can have a clearer idea of which characters should be prioritized for pulling, building, and forming teams around. So without wasting any more time, I'm hsrguide, and today we are going to fully break down the version 4.4 new player tier list. Let's do this. Alright, before we begin, I want to explain the rules of this tier list first. As usual, I've divided this tier list into several categories: Tier S, Tier A, Tier B, Tier C, and Tier D. The higher the tier, the more value I believe that character provides compared to the tiers below it. Now many of you might be wondering, what's the criteria for ranking these characters? Honestly, my evaluation is based on several factors. First, how easy the character is for a new player to use. Second, how easy the character is for a new player to build. Third, whether their teammates are easy to obtain or not. Fourth, how strong the character's overall performance is. And fifth, how effective they are in in-game content. So once again, I want to emphasize that this is not a tier list about which character is stronger. Instead, it's about which characters are more suitable for new players. Alright, let's start with Tier D. Tier D consists of characters that I personally don't think are worth prioritizing anymore. The reason is that whether we are talking about damage, team synergy, or overall performance, they simply aren't as competitive as many of the current characters available today. In other words, while you can still use and build these characters early on, they don't really have a long lifespan on your account anymore. In fact, most of the characters in this tier are older units that originally released back in version 1.x and have been around for several years. Because of that, I think you can safely skip the characters in Tier D and instead prioritize characters that provide better overall value. Alright, now let's move on to Tier C. Tier C consists of characters that still have certain uses and can still be played. However, in my personal opinion, these characters are still not particularly ideal for new players. Why? First, the effect they provide usually aren't significant enough compared to other options currently available. Second, some characters in this tier require very specific teammates, or even premium teammates. That naturally makes things more difficult for new players whose character collections are still limited. A good example would be Akron. To be fair, Akron is actually an excellent character. In fact, when she first released during version 2.x, she was arguably revolutionary. The problem is that to maximize her performance, Akron requires two Nihilitic characters, and that's a requirement that can be quite difficult for new players to fulfill. On top of that, if she isn't paired with the right team, her damage can feel underwhelming, especially when tackling endgame content. So in my opinion, the characters in Tier C can still be built and played. However, they shouldn't be a new player highest priority. If you want to build them, go ahead, and if you don't, I don't think it's a problem either. Next, let's move on to Tier B. Tier B consists of characters that I would consider worth building. Why? Because these characters meet several of the criteria I mentioned earlier in the video. They are relatively easy to build, easy to use, have accessible teammates, and possess strong synergy with the more powerful characters found in higher tiers. One example is HMC. I placed HMC in Tier B because Super Break teams are still among the strongest team archetypes in the game right now. Yes, many Super Break teams include premium characters. However, you don't necessarily need a fully premium lineup. For example, you can run a team like Firefly, HMC, Runmei, and also Gallagher. A composition like that is still extremely viable. Another character in Tier B is Casris. Why is Castris in tier B? Well, Castris is still quite good. She has a solid kit, and her damage output remains very competitive in the current meta. Unfortunately, if you don't have the premium teammates needed to support her, she can feel somewhat uncomfortable to play. On top of that, her HP burning mechanics may feel a bit complicated for players who have literally just started playing this game. Then we have also DOT teams such as Black Swan, Kafka, and also High Silence. In my opinion, DOT teams are still very strong. However, for new players, building a DOT team can be quite demanding because you need to obtain several core characters at the same time. Now there's one character I want to talk about in a bit more detail, and that's Spark C. Many of you might be wondering, why is Spark C only in tier B? After all, if you're talking about endgame performance or overall content performance, Spark C is still incredibly strong. In fact, if you look at the latest usage rates and performance data, she is still considered a meta character. The reason I placed Spark C in tier B isn't because she is bad, quite the opposite. In my opinion, Spark C functions as a sub-DPS in Elation teams. In short, she is not a character that new players absolutely need to own. To me, Spark C is more like an additional vitamin that makes your Elation team stronger. If you have her, that's great. If you don't, your team can still function perfectly fine. Instead of pulling Spark C, I'd actually recommend pulling an Elation main DPS directly, such as Evanesia or Silverwolf level 999, both of whom offer higher overall value than Spark C for newer players. Finally, let's move on to tier A. This tier is filled with characters that I highly recommend pulling and building, especially for newer players. The reason is simple. The characters in this tier provide excellent long-term value, can be used across various endgame modes, and remain relevant for a very long time. Whether it's Memory of Chaos, Pure Fiction, Apocalyptic Shadow, or other content, these characters consistently perform well. In fact, there are a few characters in tier A that I almost placed into tier S. The only reason I didn't is because the characters in tier S are simply on another level. Let's go through them one by one. First is Elation Trailblazer, or you may call it EMC. I placed EMC in tier A because he provides tremendous support to various Elation DPS characters, such as Silverwolf level 999, Evanesia, and also Spark C. All of these characters benefit greatly from EMC's presence. On top of that, if you don't have Yao Guang yet, EMC can serve as a very solid temporary replacement. That's why I think EMC is absolutely worth building. Next up is Gallagher. Honestly, Gallagher might be the best 4-star character ever released in honkaistarrail. Even by version 4.4, we still haven't received a new 4-star character capable of truly replacing him. Gallagher offers numerous advantages, generates skill points, provides excellent healing, fits perfectly into super break teams. If you're a new player looking for a healer, Gallagher is one of the most worthwhile characters you can invest in. Next is Firefly. A lot of people ask why Firefly is in tier A while some of her teammates are only in tier B. The answer is simple. Firefly has received multiple improvements over time that have made her significantly stronger. Her biggest advantage is her ability to apply Fire Weakness Implant, allowing her to be used in almost any content. If you're looking for a DPS that's flexible, easy to use, and capable of handling a wide variety of situations, Firefly is one of the best choices available. Of course, Firefly performs best in premium teams. However, even in non-premium compositions, she still performs exceptionally well. That's why I highly recommend her. Next is Sunday and Tribi. Sunday and Tribi fulfill very similar roles. Both are supports capable of providing powerful buffs and action advance. They appear in countless meta teams. Even for Himeko Nova, Sunday is considered one of her best supports. If possible, try to have both Sunday and Tribi on your account. Their investment value is extremely high. Next is Yao Guang, Silverwolf level 999, and also Evanesia. These three characters are arguably among the strongest DPS units in the current meta. Their damage output is incredibly high, and they are relatively easy to build. Meanwhile, Evanesia is even simpler. You can run Evanesia, EMC, Yao Guang, and also Hua Hua. And that team is already capable of clearing a large amount of endgame content. I also placed all 4 collaboration characters in tier A, because some of them are given away for free and provide tremendous value. Archer has already been distributed previously, while Gilgamesh will also be available for free during an upcoming event. As for Saber and Rain, both serve as extremely powerful complements to their respective teams. If you're planning to maximize Archer or Gilgamesh, Saber and Rain are both highly worthwhile pickups. They significantly increase team performance and remain relevant across many different types of content. Now let's move on to tier S. This is the highest tier. The characters here have a massive impact on account progression, especially for newer players. If you own these characters, your account progression will feel dramatically easier. First is Welt. Welt received a rework that I personally think is absolutely incredible. His kit has changed almost entirely compared to the original version. Back then, his role was very limited. Now, however, he can function as support, sustain, and also hyper carry. And the buffs he provides are incredibly powerful. Because of his amazing flexibility, I honestly believe Welt is currently the best standard character in the game. Bronya will become right after him. Next, I want to talk about Anaxa. Anaxa is one of the best DPS characters introduced during the version 3 era. The reason is simple, he's extremely flexible. He can be placed in erudition teams as well as hyper carry teams. On top of that, he possesses the ability to implant every weakness type onto enemies, something that has never existed in the game before. He also uses bounce type attacks, making him highly effective against both single target and multi-target encounters. This is what allows Anaxa to excel in nearly every type of content. Additionally, he's easy to build, easy to play, and highly effective for newer players. Next is RMC. RMC helps new players tremendously because they can replace many premium support functions. If you don't own Sunday or Bronya, RMC can serve as an excellent alternative. The true damage mechanics they provide make many types of content significantly easier. No matter the situation, RMC almost always contributes something valuable to your team. Next is Mortonix Blade. Mortonix Blade is one of the newer characters that absolutely deserves a place in tier S. The main reason is that his debuffs are incredibly powerful. In fact, one of the strongest debuffs currently available in the game belongs to Mortonix Blade. What makes him even more special is that he doesn't only provide debuffs. His personal damage output is also extremely high. Unlike characters such as Cypher, who rely more heavily on specific conditions, Mortonix Blade is capable of standing on his own as both a DPS and a support. He can apply powerful debuffs, increase ultimate damage, function as a hyper carry, and support various teams' archetypes. That's why I highly recommend him for new players. And lastly, Himeko Nova. In my opinion, Himeko Nova is one of the best characters ever released for new players. Why? Because she barely requires any premium characters. Himeko Nova only needs Astral Express members or Trailblazer companion, all of whom are automatically available to every player from the beginning of the game. For example, RMC, EMC, March 7th, and also Danhang. These characters alone are already enough to make Himeko Nova perform well. This means that even if you don't own a single premium character, Himeko Nova can still be played at an optimal level. That's the reason I placed her in tier S. If you are a brand new player and can only choose one character to prioritize, Himeko Nova is one of the best possible options. Her build is relatively easy, her damage is high, and her performance is extremely consistent. Of course, she does have one weakness. She doesn't possess weakness implant and fire resistance reduction. As a result, her performance can drop slightly against enemies with high fire resistance. However, for the vast majority of general and endgame content, Himeko Nova remains more than capable of clearing everything effectively. That's pretty much the complete version 4.4 tier list that I've put together. I've also displayed the full tier list on your screen as a reference. Once again, this is simply my personal opinion based on my experience playing the game from version 1.0 all the way to version 4.4. Of course, you're completely free to have different opinion, because everyone has their own experiences and perspectives. However, in general, I believe this tier list can serve as a very safe guideline, especially for new players who are still unsure about which characters they should prioritize. If there's anything you'd still like to ask, feel free to leave any comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video.